And I just say, just get back to just running. The more technical I got, the more you start looking at things that really don't matter. Like you start looking at tiny, minute things, heart rates and certain zones at tempos. But the crux of it is just run. Consistency is key.
This is Running for Real, the podcast for runners who know that for every runner's high, there are just as many lows. All those just missed PRs, easy runs that feel hard, injury blues, and more. Each week, we'll talk to running, health, and wellness experts about their highs, lows, and best advice to build our confidence. Running for Real is about being honest, being brave, and most of all, not feeling alone. And now here's our host, whose favorite wedding gift was an ice cream maker, Tina Muir.
Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Running for Real podcast, episode number 59. I am really thankful that you are here right now, and I have such a special one for you. I am so excited to tell you about this one. But before I do, last week you heard from Ali Feller of the Ali on the Run show. You know, she was a great girl, really bubbly, really happy for her and her husband that they are now expecting. We actually didn't know that when we recorded, but it was a fantastic episode, just great interview, and really enjoyed talking to her. So if you missed that one with Ali on the Run, make sure you go back and check that one out. Now, today, as I mentioned, I have something special for you. And actually, it's so special that I started the interview, recorded the interview, got about 3/4 of the way through, started panicking that I hadn't managed to get half of the questions I wanted to ask him, and asked him if there was any way I could record it a second half and have a part 2, and he agreed. So I am really excited that this is a bit of a long episode, but there's so much gold in here today. So I am having an interview with Colin McCourt, who, if you are in the UK, you probably have heard of Colin. If you are anywhere else, you may not have. Colin is known for his bet that he had with some friends last year. And if he didn't accomplish this bet, which we're going to talk about in a minute, he had a rather strange consequence that made it very dire for him to actually accomplish this bet and do something very difficult. But I think a lot of you are going to be able to understand what Colin is going through coming back to the sport after a long layoff. And, you know, he's very real. Him and I have the same viewpoint on so many things. I think you're going to absolutely love him. So make sure you get yourself ready. And this is going to be a fantastic one. But before I get to that, so for the last month, I've been telling you about my Running for Real podcast series. You've heard me talking about them. This is the last time I'm going to mention them in a full ad setting. But I worked really hard to get these done. I'm really proud of them. And, you know, this is what I wanted to promote in the final weeks before my daughter was born. But as she arrived early, I never got the chance. So I'm sharing them with you now. We're talking about the final one today. And this one is kind of relevant to today's episode because I think a lot of what Colin is talking about will be kind of the same thing that new runners are going to be thinking about. But it's also, you know, Colin is not exactly a brand new runner, so I understand, but it just seemed to be the right fit for today's episode. So before I get on to what that is about, there are 6 series that I created: beginners, coming back from injury, marathon, nutrition, pregnancy and postpartum, and everyone's favorite, mental training. And each one contains 5 to 7 episodes of specific, direct, to the point interviews with some of the best experts in the world. This one in particular has some really, really powerful experts. It also comes along with a specific guide with advice from those guests, and I bugged the heck out of them to get them to give me their advice. As I said, I'm really proud of them. These are unlike anything else out there. If you haven't checked them out, please will you go to my website and look at them. You know, this is something that I think you're really going to enjoy. And if you do enjoy these free Running for Real podcast episodes, this is something, yes, it is a paid product, but it is well worth the value. In fact, I was told I should have marketed them for double the price that I'm offering them, but I didn't want to make it expensive. I didn't want to make it something where, you know, I ruled people out. I made it nice and affordable. And if you do support the Running for Real podcast, that's a great way to give back to me. Or you can also leave a review or rating. So today, is the beginners podcast series I wanted to tell you about. We have an all-star lineup for this one, including Hal Higdon, probably the father or the grandfather of beginners running, Jenny Hadfield, who many of you know, a wonderful woman, really known with her beginners running, and George Anderson, you know, another person who's really known for doing great things in the running community, especially with new runners. Now, each episode is focused on a specific part of being a beginner, questions beginners may have. And, I answer things like, what's the best way to get started? What makes someone a real runner? How do I set a weight loss goal? How do I set a time goal? When is the best time to start? All the usual questions, and then so much more. I tried to answer every question that a new runner may have, and I'm really proud of what it is. I think it is a great series. This is unlike anything else that I've seen out there. And you can find out more about it by going to the show notes, which are going to be at tinamuir.com/episode 59, or by visiting tinamuir.com, going to the tab that says podcast and finding the beginner series. So after a quick word from Body Health, we will be right to the episode with Colin. Thank you to Body Health for sponsoring this episode of Running for Real. You can save 10% at bodyhealth.com using coupon code TINA10 and join hundreds of other Running for Real listeners who have tried Perfect Amino and use it every day. Colin, thank you so much for joining me on the Running for Real podcast. I am really excited to talk to you today, especially as you are a fellow Brit. Always love having my fellow Brits on the show, but thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, no problem at all.
Okay, so this is going to be a bit of a different one, and I think this is going to be very inspiring for many of my listeners who are American. So they may not have heard of you, because I know it was kind of mostly in Britain that your story kind of went viral, and we're going to talk about that. Actually, let's start with that. How did it feel knowing that you were, like you say yourself often, just a regular guy, when suddenly you are in every publication, you're all over the internet, and your phone is ringing off the hook? Did you ever think in your life you would end up going through that stage?
No, not at all. No. You just it's quite surreal when you just think it was just like a random little bet that you took on with your friends, and then one of them told a news publication here that they know someone that I was doing it, and then they just ran with it, and then it just sort of got a bit out of control from there. Yeah,
it's crazy, but in a good way, and we're going to go on to talk about exactly what that is in just a second. But okay, let's go back to the beginning. So, you were a very successful runner for Great Britain, early on in your running life, running 1:46 in the 800, 3:37 in the 1500, 4:04 in the mile, ran for Great Britain. And I should add, for any Americans, the mile, we don't race in the UK, the mile very much at all. So I'm sure Colin would have broken 4 had he had more opportunities. But yeah, you were doing very well running for Great Britain. But first tell us about, you decided to stop running. What was the reason for that? I know the 2012 Olympics was part of it, but was that the whole decision, or what came into that?
Basically, I was a bit lost for a few years. So my whole goal was to make the 2012 Olympics. I'd failed to make the 2008 Olympics. Just had a really up and down career. Like, it was all over the place. There was times where it was really, really good, and there were times when it wasn't so good. And that was just due to my management of my time and coaches and situations that I put myself in. And then everything was riding on 2012, financially, everything was pretty much geared towards me making the team and doing really well, and basically kickstarting my career finally, and then hopefully pushing on from there. But it just didn't happen. I got injured, like everyone does. You get sidetracked. I wasn't running very well. I was training the best I'd ever trained. I couldn't race. It was just a mixture of stuff, and I was always really forward thinking. I would always think far too far in the future. I always wanted everything now. And I'd be right, so if I run this race and I run this time, I'll make this much. It sounds silly, but I'll make this much money, and I'll do this and I'll do that.
Yep.
And I just sort of got into a really bad headspace, really negative. Running wasn't something that I enjoyed doing. I was just doing it because I was good at it. And at the time I thought I was good at it, and I could make a little bit of money, but actually I sort of convinced myself that I needed to get a real job, and I needed to buy a house and settle down and do all these normal things that other people, like my friends who aren't runners, do. And running was sort of not giving me that stimulus to I couldn't afford to buy a house. I didn't have any money. I wasn't making any money from the sport. And I just sort of got a bit disheartened by it, and I didn't do anything to change that. I didn't have a part-time job. I was living off race money and stuff, and I created the atmosphere myself. Instead of thinking my way through it, I was I'm going to be good, it's going to happen for me. And I didn't plan in the now. I wasn't looking at what can I do now? What can I make my life more comfortable? Can I just go and get a part-time job and be able to buy something simple as dinner for the week. Do you know what I mean? Like, and be comfortable with buying like good food instead of having to buy like terrible food and not fill yourself up properly and not fuel yourself right. I was just in a really bad headspace, and then it just sort of all came crumbling down when I couldn't get anywhere near the qualification time. I was running terribly, and I just couldn't get it together. And I couldn't put it together on how to get out of the situation I was in. The only thing I could do was to think, I need to go get a job. That's what I was fixated on, getting a real job and working full time, which now I hate. But that was my whole goal, was to go normal, which sounds crazy because I had the best life ever. But I'd got myself into a situation in my head that I didn't have an escape route on. Like the running wasn't happening, which was all I put all my energy in. Like I had nothing else in my life except for running, and that wasn't going well. And it just sort of all came crashing down around me, and I just didn't know what to do. So I just like reverted to get a job, go home, live with the parents for a bit, but try and buy a house. And then them goals became like, now I laugh at myself because that was my goal, was to just go and be normal.
Yeah. Which, there's so many questions I want to ask you based on what you just said there. There's so many directions I could go in. To my listeners, does that sound eerily familiar to you? Colin, you probably don't know my story, but I did actually stop running April 2017. Mine was partly to get my period back, but also I've talked openly about how a lot of it was same thing. I had become completely disenchanted with running, just had no motivation left after years of trying so hard to get that Great Britain vest. And it just, once I got it, I just couldn't get my motivation back. Okay, so let's kind of break parts of this down. Now, you mentioned so I'm guessing a lot of this was balance. So looking back now, you feel like your life was completely out of balance. That's why you took it so hard when you get injured. You took it so hard when you struggled. Looking back now, if you'd have added that part-time job, added, something to keep you more balanced in your life, do you think you would have been able to keep going, or do you think you were too far beyond that?
I did that like in stages. Like I did work. I had to in the summers, I didn't really work because I was racing so much. So I couldn't actually commit to a part-time job because I was either traveling away for training or away racing like every weekend. But in the winters, I worked like part-time. It was just leading up to like 2011, 2012. I got good contracts with shoe companies and stuff, which meant I could train full time. But my best running came when I worked. Like when I was younger, like 17, 18 to 24, I worked pretty much full time and trained. It's just once I lost that like work ethic, which I think it was, of you've got to work 9 to 5, then you can train like 5 to 7. I had no other commitments, like no girlfriend, sad, I know, no baby. And I could just basically just work and train and then race at the weekends and stuff. So once I lost that, I think I just became too obsessed with running. And I think that's what a lot of people do. You get into a headspace where all you think about is, oh my God, I feel terrible today. I've got to do this session. I can't believe I ran too hard in this run. I need to eat this X amount of food. I need to do this at this time. I need to sleep for this many hours. And that isn't life. And that isn't like that. It doesn't work that way. Like if you can just forget what you do. It's not forget, but leave what you do every day behind you. So like yesterday you run 10 miles at like 8-minute mile and 10-minute mile. But then the next day you run at 7-minute mile or whatever it is at your pace. Forget about it and just do each day as it comes. So yeah, you might have a session and you feel awful. Like your legs are dead, like you've trained really hard for the week, but the more you fixate on the yesterday and like, oh, I'm so tired from this and I've done all this, the more you can't progress because you're constantly holding yourself back because you think, I'll take today a little bit easier. And that's what I got into the headspace in 2012. It was like, I don't feel how I did in 2011. I don't feel how I did in 2010. I'm not running. My sessions aren't the same, but my body's changing. I was like 3 years older. I needed a different stimulus in training. I needed to think differently around, not massively, just let go of everything of like doing these 400 reps 20 times. I should be running them in 65 seconds, but I'm running them in 66. It's a second difference. That could be anything between you didn't have an hour extra sleep, like you didn't eat properly. Like it could be a multitude of things, but you don't think that at the time. You just think I should be doing this right now because I did it. Yeah, I did that yesterday. Yeah. And that's the problem that we get into as runners. And I think once you go down that headspace, you really struggle unless you get lucky. And I truly believe that you have a really good month or a really good year, and then that all sorts you out and you end up really far ahead of your game, like at a championships or running really well in a marathon or whatever it is. You run a really good park run. That can change your whole perspective in seconds. So by the time you finish that race and you've run a PB in your park run, that whole week that you thought was awful and was going terrible is gone.
Absolutely. Yes.
And it's completely irrelevant, because then you're now like, oh, actually, I've just ran a PB like in the park run. I'm feeling great. This next week's going to be great. And it might not be. It might be worse than the week before, but you're mentally in a place where it is better.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't catch that break in 2012 when I retired. I couldn't get to the point where I caught a break. So it was just not unlucky. I just didn't work my way through it. I was just constantly looking like, I need to be faster at this point. I've done this session better. I've raced this race faster. And actually it could just be one race that I turn up and I have 8 hours sleep and I don't stay up playing PlayStation until 4 a.m. and drinking Coca-Cola all night and being an idiot. And actually like look after myself. And I run well. Like it's them little things that you just have to put into perspective. And I think like now we've had a baby, that's really structured my life, because I only have X amount of time to train outside of my job. So I only have like 2-3 hours before I have to, 2 hours before I have to get home. Then I bath the baby every night. So that's my job and I want that job. So I make sure I'm home in time to do that. And I get up with him in the mornings and then I go to work. So I only have X amount of time to train, which is actually quite structured for me now. And I wish I'd had that when I was a professional athlete. Like I wish I'd had like Finney, my son, like earlier with Rebecca, like when we weren't together then, but if we were, I think my whole life would have been different.
So true. So true. And I definitely agree. Feel exactly the same way right now. You know, you get in what you can, and also you kind of just take it as, well, whatever, like if it, you know, if I have to take a week off here, or if I don't get this done, oh well, you know, I've got something else in my life. And I think everything you just said right there is so important. It doesn't have to be a baby, but finding something that is meaningful to you other than just the running. And I think that goes from elite all the way down to recreational, you know,
100%.
Very back of the pack. Anyone can get obsessed with it. So thank you so much for sharing right there. Really, really good to hear you say that. Now, how old were you when you did take this step away?
What am I now? 32. So 6 years. My maths is terrible and I work for a bank. So 27.
Okay. So you were,
6 years. That's 27.
It's all right. I do the same thing. So you were, you know, it wasn't like you were a teenager, and, you know, it's funny, just something to mention to you, that you kind of talked about how you'd been struggling with it for a few years, and you know, that 2012 was like the straw that broke the camel's back. Now, I often get interviewed here and in the US, and I get asked, you know, how did I feel about being a professional runner? How did I feel about continuing on, you know, at the elite level? But in the UK, that doesn't happen very often. It's kind of, if you make it past that 18, 19 years old of going to university, most people just tend to keep going. So, you know, you kind of stepping away when you did, or me kind of stepping away, same, I was 28 when I stepped away. So, you know, how did everyone react when you did first step away? You know, friends and family, mine tended to think, oh, we've got our Tina back, because I wasn't so consumed with running. But what did your friends and family think about you?
I didn't tell anyone.
That you'd stopped?
I just didn't turn up to stuff. Yeah, okay. I just stopped going. I finished that. I can't remember what race it was. I think it was some race. I think it was maybe it was even the trials. I don't remember. I just know like a week after this race, it's all a bit of a blur now. I just packed my stuff up in London, and my mum come pick me up, and that was it. We went home. She just said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I'm just coming home for a bit, just to get relaxed." Like basically just said something like, the flat where I'm living, the rent's up and whatever, it's all finished, and that's it. Well, it wasn't. I could have stayed there. I just moved home, and then within like a week of being at home, I'd applied for a job and got a job at Nationwide, which I still work at now. And then I just started working, and then no one really noticed because I didn't say anything for a long time, until like then people were like, what are you doing? Do you want to come on this training camp, or are you going to come back? And I was like, nah, it's done. Like I'm done right now. So, and at that point I was back. For the whole of the Olympics of 2012, I was already working full time. So by the time it started, I'd already started my full-time job. And I was just literally working, I watched it, but I was just like, not really there, not really together too much around what was happening with it. Like, wasn't really like paying attention to what people were saying to me and stuff. So I don't think people were concerned, I think, but I think they just thought, he'll be back in X amount of time and we'll just leave him to clear his head. Cause I think people kind of realized at the time I was having some problems mentally or, because it definitely wasn't physical. So they probably just thought, we'll just give him some space. And then months turned into years. And then people were like, oh, right, he has actually gone.
Yeah.
And then before I knew it, like I was 100 kilograms.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. So you stopped running, as we've mentioned, gained over 50 pounds to become your heaviest, from what I read, 207 pounds or 94 kilograms for those listening. So was it kind of just the exercise aspect that went differently, that you just removed essentially the calorie burning, or was it a case of with your diet you thought, oh, well, doesn't matter anymore, and you just kind of let yourself, eat whatever you wanted when you wanted?
It's a combination of, I think, when I think back now, it's a combination of just throwing my toys out the pram and just saying, right, I can do what I want now. I can eat a pizza every single night if I want. I can drink every night, which I did. Which was probably like not great, but you fall into this working environment. So as soon as you start working in an office and or anywhere really, you start getting into this, like, we'll go for a drink tonight. Like, today's been a tough day at work. Let's go for a beer. That beer turns into like 5 beers. And then on top of that, you're also eating like, I don't know, like a pizza while you're there, and then having a burger.
Kebab on the way home.
Exactly. And then that turns into like a 1 o'clock every night. And you're working, then on a Friday night, you're out all night, and then you're constantly, and then for like 4 years straight, I think I did that consistently until I met Rebecca. And then I sort of started to become a bit conscious of it after about 3 years, like, geez, I'm putting a bit of weight here. Like, I think I'm getting a bit big. But I carried on going, and then you just sort of start thinking, it took me a long time to figure out I was overweight and out of shape, because I think I was just quite not happy, but I was substituting happiness with food and drink and late nights and working too hard. And I put all my effort into my job. I was doing like 14-hour days, which was just me projecting into, I wasn't running anymore. So I needed to put all this energy that I've got from going running every day back into my work. So instead of running in the mornings and in the evenings, I would just work. I just wouldn't think about going for a run. So I'd get into work like an hour, 2 hours early, which sounds crazy. I'd think that I wanted to be so X high up in the company that I was working at, which I don't actually want at all. But I'd convinced myself that that's what I wanted to do, and it was normal to do that. And it took me a long time to get out of that mindset that I don't want to be working 9 to 5 until I'm 65. Not that I don't want to have a job, and I'm not saying that I want to not work or anything, but I realize that sitting at a desk, looking at a computer and managing people is not what life is about. And now I realize how great my life was as a professional athlete, to be able to get up, go train, be outdoors and train all day and enjoy the life that you had. And I'm not saying I'll get that back. I'm just saying I didn't appreciate the time I had, and this freedom that I actually had without having to answer to anybody really, but myself, and all the pressures that I put on myself, where when I look back now compared to the working world, are ridiculous. Because you've got deadlines and stuff at work, and you think how meaningless they are and how much people put weight on things that just don't make sense. And you think of all the things that you put weight on in your running that were even more irrelevant than people think things are at work and stuff. And you're like, oh, do you know what? I wish I just had this mentality when I was running, because missing a run isn't a big deal. If you can't do it, you can't do it. But you would stress so much about doing something like that. You'd think, oh, I'm missing out, and what am I doing? I didn't do that weight session, or this track session didn't go that well. And then in the working world, you're like, oh, I missed a deadline, but no one's dead. Like, it's just like, it's not it's just crazy. And then the reactions of like managers and bosses when you do that, you think, there's no need for that really. Just relax a little bit. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's quite funny.
No, definitely. And I think obviously part of that is going to be age. You become so much wiser, and especially like you said, your perspective changing with a child. But interesting for you to say that, because I think a lot of people will be able to resonate with that on how serious we take things, and we know we're doing it, but it can be really hard to kind of pull yourself out of it at the time. So this can be another reminder. So you mentioned, meeting Rebecca, and you kind of realized that you were gaining weight, realized you were in this place. Was there kind of a moment that made everything kind of be like, okay, I need to make a change? Was it Rebecca started to kind of make you realize that there was more to life than just work? Or was it just the bet itself, which we're going to talk about in a second, that actually was just the kind of snapping point? What made this sudden decision to change something?
I'm not sure actually. Like, Rebecca's not really a runner or anything, so she didn't know anything about me before we met, if that makes sense. So we were just work colleagues and we met, and that was all she knew. She didn't know that I ran. She didn't know the level that I ran at. She didn't know anything about running. She doesn't know any. I don't think she said she didn't, but I don't know.
Okay.
But yeah, like I'd mentioned I ran, but I didn't go into massive detail because I was, to be honest, and I still am a little bit now, I was embarrassed that I was a professional athlete and now I work. If this makes sense, like, I was a professional athlete. I had everything that everybody else had. I had a really nice, great life that I threw away, and I now work 9 to 5 in a bank, and I was embarrassed about that, I think. And I know you shouldn't be, but like, I didn't talk to anybody about it. I didn't tell any of the people at work that I ran. Didn't speak about running to people, wouldn't engage with people who ran at work and who talked about it openly. I would just ignore the conversation. And when people found out and stuff, I was really embarrassed. Like, when they would like bring up YouTube clips, like after I'd worked for a while and say, "Is this you?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, I used to run." And then people would like talk about it and stuff. And I wouldn't want to engage in that conversation, mainly because it was like, it sounds crazy, but it's not at all. But it felt at the time, I was embarrassed that I'd been at that level and didn't fully achieve what I wanted to achieve, and now was just working, which I know sounds ungrateful or weird, and I'm not getting the words out properly, but I was just in a place where I wasn't comfortable with people thinking, "Geez, what are you doing working here? Like, why are you working here? Like, why are you doing this? If you had this life that you did before, why are you here?" And it's sort of like, that's how I would think. And I would think what other people would think of me. And I know that's stupid, because you'd never think that way. You should just do what you want. And if that's working, then that's working. If that's running, then that's running. But I was just in a position where I just thought, really, people must just think, what an idiot.
Mm-hmm. Well, actually, Colin, you clearly in when you saying that you feel, silly for thinking that, you're wondering why you're thinking that. But I can say I felt exactly the same way when I stopped running. Part of the reason I, relied so heavily on the amenorrhea aspect when I was sharing my story was because I was terrified of people saying, "You're an idiot. Why are you wasting your talent stopping running? Like, what are you doing? Why would you stop running when you're that good? You've just achieved this big goal." So I completely understand what you're saying. I thought people would just say to me I was stupid, throwing away my talents, essentially. So I completely get what you're saying there. Great, thank you, and thanks for being so honest with us. Okay, so let's talk about the bet itself. You had this bet with friends. You're going to tell us the story to break 16 minutes in the 5K, which is 5:08 per mile pace for anyone listening, by the end of 2017. Or you would tattoo, was it 16 or 17 friends' names onto your body?
Names, yeah.
So tell us about how that went down, how this came up, and, what it did to you on that day.
Yeah, it's really crazy. Basically, like, I'd swapped phones, and somehow on this new phone, there was a picture of me running, and obviously I was dead skinny then. And I thought, I look all right there. But I don't know how it got on this phone at all. So as you do, I just Instagrammed it, just saying like, "Oh, can't believe it's been X amount of years since I look like this," and blah, blah, blah. I should actually go back, but I wrote something. And I think I had my top off at the time, which is crazy. And Rebecca was there, and I took my top off and was like, "Rebecca, like, I'm fat." She was like, "Nah," she's being dead nice. She was like, no, you just look normal and stuff. And I was like, "Look, you're being nice now. Like, I'm massive." So then I jumped on the scales and was like, oh my God, what? Because I never jump on the scales. Like we got them.
At that point.
No, I didn't have a clue. I knew I was bigger.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that I didn't have cheekbones anymore. I knew my face was rounder. I was conscious that I was big, but I didn't think I was like as big as I was, basically. So I was like, oh, geez, take a picture of me. I don't know why. I was like, just take a picture of this. I'm going to get fit. Like, I'm this embarrassing. I can't actually believe, like, from these. So the two pictures I had side by side, like me running in like 2010, me in like 2017 as this like massive guy. And I was like, just 30 seconds must have gone by in my head. And I was like, right, I'll be back in a minute. She was like, what? And I just running kit on, ran out the door and thought, right, I just need to see if I can still do this. And this was before the bet, anything that happened. This is like the day of the bet. I went for a run, did like, I think it was like 2 miles or something. And it took me about 45 minutes.
So had you run ridiculous. A step between?
No, not at all. No,
okay.
That's a lie. Like the year before I'd gone to start running and I basically just took pictures of myself running and just walked back to the house and I didn't lose any weight. So like I was pretending, I was like, oh, I'm going to get fit. Like the year before I was like, I'm going to get fit, but didn't think I was fat, didn't think I was overweight, was just in the mindset that like, oh, I'll do a nice Instagram and I'll make like some nice posts and I'll do some pictures of me running and I'll put some nice quotes on it. And basically all I did was I'd just leave the house, walk to like a park, take some pictures, write a nice comment on it and put it up. And I did that for about a month, if that. Wow. Didn't lose any weight. Sacked it off, went back to eating, pigged out, and then it all hit me then. And then a year later, I was like, oh, do you know what? I definitely am massive now. So I thought I'll just go for this run. I'll do a proper one this time instead of just taking a camera and stuff. Just went out, did 2 miles, and it was horrific. I was like, thought I was going to die. Got back in and then just said, I'm going to lose weight. So she was like, what? I was like, right, I'm going to lose weight. So then I posted the fat picture up after I'd been for that run and said, right, everybody starts now or something. I'm going to start to lose weight. I've really put on weight, blah, blah, blah. And then the boys, my friends, got hold of it, thought it was hilarious. They were in the group chat and they were like taking the mic and like just joking around. And they did it for hours. And I ended up just putting my phone down and was like, I'm not interested in this. Like I'm being ripped to shreds here. Because obviously I hadn't seen a few of them for a while, like a year or two. So I'd obviously got even bigger than last time, and they were calling me fat last time when I seen them as well. Anyway, but like 3 or 4 hours went by. It got to like 11, 12 o'clock, I think, and Rebecca was like, "Look, you need to look at this phone. Like it's getting out of control. Like it's been going off all evening." And I was like, "Oh, all right then." So like I pick up the phone. There's hundreds and hundreds of messages of them just taking the mick out of me, and basically they'd come to the conclusion that I was in the bet, whatever. I just needed to agree the terms. At first it started at like 17 minutes, which I was buzzing for. Then a few of them are still runners. So they were like, definitely not. He'll run that easily. So they brought it down to 16 minutes for 5K. Then it was about the tattoos. Then it was like money. And then it went back to the tattoos. And then they agreed on the tattoos and all this stuff. And it was like 2:30 in the morning before we finished, and then we had it finally agreed and like all written up. Did
they say about the tattoos, knowing that you're the kind of person that would rise to a challenge, like they knew you well enough that this was going to get you at some point?
They know that I'm stupid enough out of all of them. Like for one time, for example, I was bet £100 to dye my hair like Malfoy from Harry Potter, and the rule on it was that I had to have it for the entire time it grew out. I wasn't allowed to shave my head. So I thought it would be a month, but it ended up being like 5 months for the entire of this horrible, like gingery yellow mop to come off the top of my head because it went wrong and ended up having some stupid thing. And I once got bet, like, I think it was like £100 to lie face down for 3 hours on a bed, which I did, which was great. So they knew I was stupid enough to take on a silly bet, and I'm the only one out of all of them that would have done it. If I'd have lost, I would have definitely got the tattoos. So
you would have 100%. You believe that?
Yeah, 100. Okay. Yeah, 100%. Like I think like with them, with me, like they know that I would have definitely like. If I'm going to go into a bet and I'm going to say, right, it's going to do that, and then it's going to go so public as well, and people are going to be like in on it, and all people are going to be watching. Like, how could I turn around at the end and say, oh, I didn't run it and I'm not going to get these tattoos? It shows like no commitment to it. Just I did it. Like I know the training and stuff would do it, but it's not in me. If I say I'm going to do it, then I have to do it. Okay. And that's what happened with the sub 16. Like I said, I was going to do it, so I had to do it. So I had to train for it. I had to get it right. I had to make sure it was done. So yeah, they were onto a win. And I think they were just more happy that they wanted me to lose weight. So I wasn't like, so like in a bad way. Cause I was like sweating, walking upstairs and like, couldn't even play with the baby and stuff. I was out of control.
Okay. Well, thank you for being honest with us and sharing it. It's interesting to hear. And I guess, good that you finally came to a conclusion and it gave you that kickstart. Was there a kind of, what have I done moment afterwards?
100%. Like as soon as I said yes at 2:00 in the morning, I was like, I was in sweats. I was like, what is happening here? And I panicked. Rebecca was asleep. I woke her up and was like, I don't know what I'm going to do here. Like, because after that run I did, I was like, there's no way I'm ever going to like get back to running properly at all. Like, it's so bad that it was just tough. Like mentally, I was just like, I don't know what I'm going to do here. Panicked massively. But then that morning I got up at 6, went for a run and just started from there. And then that's how I just tortured myself, not in a bad way. I was just like, right, you didn't get up at 6 when you're a professional athlete. You used to roll out of bed at like 10. So you're going to get up at 6 every morning for the next 3 months and you're going to run every day. So I did that. And once I got through that first 3 months, I'd lost a lot of weight really quickly because I was getting up early and running before I was eating and then coming back. And it was only like 2 miles a day. It wasn't like anything like crazy. It was just trying to teach myself to run because there was some bad aches and pains at the beginning. Yeah,
I'm sure. And were there any points when you did you have any points along the way where you were like, I'm not going to bother today, or, it doesn't matter if I take the day off, kind of cheating essentially? Or was that real enough? You knew how hard this was going to be that you were like on it and you were going to do it, even if you didn't feel like it?
Yeah, no, I think I'd be lying if I say I didn't. Like I think it's in every person, whether you're Mo Farah or you're just someone just like training to run a marathon for a charity. Like it doesn't matter. You will inevitably have a day where you just think, I will just leave it. I just don't need this today. Sometimes yes, listen to yourself and don't do it because you won't get anything out of it. And some days you do need to just push through and just get out there and do it, because by the time you finish, you'll be like, I can't believe that. It's like an unwritten rule that it pushes you on to another level sometimes that you don't realize, because you beat that part of your brain that's telling you not to go out, and you get to the next stage that you wouldn't have got to if you'd have stayed in. But there are some times when you do need to stay in, because there's times when I went for a run and I pulled a calf, if I'd have just rested like I said I was going to, I would have been fine, but I forced myself out the door, and that negative forcing can sometimes force you into a position that you don't want to be in, like physically, and your body's saying, look, I was trying to tell you not to run, and yes, you might have thought you were cheating and you were going to miss a day, but actually I was trying to say to you, don't run. And there are days when your brain's telling you, don't run, and you should run, and you need to get out there and you need to do it. It's trying to find that balance. And there was days where I was like, nah, it's not happening today. Like I'm not going. I don't want to do it. Threw little tantrums to myself. But I went out and I did nearly, I think it only happened a few times. It's happened more since the bet has finished. Like now I'm doing other stuff that my brain's like, I'll just leave it today. It's fine. Like you've done that. And it's become a little bit more difficult since. Trying to beat that, but it's better, and it's much better than it was when I was a professional athlete, when I used to just miss days because I just didn't want to, just couldn't be bothered, which sounds ridiculous, but I just didn't want to do it.
No, that makes sense.
But yeah, like I will always have that like gremlin-y type of like noise that's, you're not doing enough, you're not good enough, you need to do this.
Everyone has that, yeah. So I think everyone listening can resonate with you there.
Yeah, and it's just... Go
on, what were you going to say?
No, I was just going to say, it's just about trying to beat that, trying to win. It's like little battles every day that you have to win. There's some that you have to leave, and you just have to say, right, that's fine. You can have that one. Like it might be that you have a Five Guys for your lunch, and that's a battle that you lost, but then you might do 10 miles after work or whatever it is. And that's the win. So you've actually won for the day, even though you've had a few mini losses in the day.
Yeah, good way of thinking about it.
Yeah, and if you can just leave that and park it, and then the next day try and do better and try and not have the Five Guys for lunch and still do the 10 miles, then you've won again. And you just can keep just ticking off them little victories, because then they just turn into the huge ones where you're at the actual ideal weight that you want to be. You're running the times that you want to be running, and you're you then can throw a Five Guys in and it's not actually going to be a big deal. Not promoting Five Guys here. It's just there's one over the road and I just can't stop thinking about it today.
Okay, well, we know where you're going later, but
I know, I'm going to try and avoid it.
No, that's such a good way of looking at it. And thank you so much. I really think that's going to help a lot of people. And you know, you've been very open and honest from the start with your social media, sharing, you know, videos and updates, very fun, very much yourself. But you mentioned, you know, the year before you were showing these like perfect pictures of you going for a run, even though you weren't. What gave you the confidence at this point when you were doing this to be like, you know what, I'm going to share everything. I'm going to say how much I'm struggling. I'm going to kind of be myself. What allowed you to have the confidence to do that?
I think I just thought like, I was looking at like you, because like you do, you look through YouTube, you look through things and you think like, what are people doing that, I don't know, that could help me get fitter or whatever. And I just thought some of this stuff just isn't real. Like, I'm not saying that I went and thought, oh, this stuff is fake, I need to do something real. I just thought I'm going to do it this way and I'm just going to be honest and I'm going to tell people that it's not easy every day. Like you do not go out every day and you run 6-minute mile in and you run 30 minutes for 10K. Like it's not possible. Even the elites, even as an elite, I had days where I would crawl on a run and feel crap, I need to sleep all day, or like whatever it is, like you do not feel how Instagram sometimes says or social media says that people are. It's impossible. And that's why places like Strava and places like Instagram should just be you say it. This is my story. Like I am trying my hardest to run sub 16 minutes. I might not get there, but actually it's really difficult and you can do it too. Like you can do it too, whether it's you break 60 minutes or you break 20 minutes or you break 30 minutes for 5K, we all feel the same. We all have the same thoughts, the same feelings. We think the same, but we all think that everybody else thinks differently. And whether you're a 13-minute 5K elite runner or me running sub 16, you think exactly the same. You have days where you don't want to go out. You have days that you're just stressing. You have days where you're body conscious and you think, do you know what? I can't wear these tight shorts today because I feel fat. It happens. Like you mentally go through things and like, oh, I don't want to wear this top today because it doesn't go with my shorts. Like simple things like that happen every day to everybody, but no one at an elite level wants to talk about it and say, I had a bad session today. I had a bad run today. This week hasn't gone that well. Then they get to a major championships and they say, oh, I've been injured for 3 weeks. And everyone's like, well, have you? Because I don't know about it. And then no one's interested because they've got an excuse, and they always seem to have an excuse when they get to a championships. But actually, if you'd have followed their story, you'd know that they have actually had a stress fracture and been out for 6 months or whatever. But you don't know that at the time because no one's telling you about it. And that's what's frustrating for me. And that's why I started doing it, because I thought I want to show people that you won't run a PB at every single park run. Like you won't PB in every race. Like I've had runs where I've ran ridiculously well for like 10 miles and I've ran 6-minute mile in or 5:50 mile in for the entire thing. And someone's gone, oh my God, that's amazing. How do you do that every day? And it's like, I don't do it every day. Yesterday I was 7-minute mile in and I literally couldn't finish. I had to stop at 4 miles and get on the train and get home because my legs wouldn't move. And that happens to everyone. But they just don't want to talk about it. And I don't know why. And I've spoke to people who are elites because I've got friends and they just don't want to do it. And I don't understand why they don't want to do it. It's really mind-boggling to me.
Oh my God, Colin, I know my listeners are going to know this, the ones who listen often, but you don't know this. I literally think I have just met the male version of me. What you just said right there is literally like word for word what I promote to my fans, to my audience, everyone. Like I literally could have said that myself. Amazing to hear you say that. And I'm so glad to hear you say that for others listening. Colin is so right. And it drives me crazy too. But so I just can't wrap my brain around that. I feel like those words could have come out of my mouth. Thank you so much for sharing that. So true. And I love that that was your reason and you've continued to do that. And for anyone listening, go find Colin on Instagram, on Strava, on wherever else you are. We'll talk about that at the end. So thank you so much for saying that. Now, one other thing before we get on, there's so many other things I want to ask you about. But just in the sake of time, tell us about essentially the happy ending, how it happened, and the day of that, if and when it did actually happen.
Yeah, so like I'd had a few attempts before and they'd gone horrible. I tried to do a park run and I was way out in front trying to do it on my own. It wasn't happening. And got contacted by a guy and he was like, come do this race. It's amazing. I was like, oh, do you know what? No, I'm not interested. But then and that sounds bad, and I know it sounds bad, and I've explained to the guy as well, like I was just not in the headspace at that point after like 4 failed attempts. And I was like, right, okay, it got to the point and I was like, I didn't realize what the date was. And I was like, oh my God, it's like November. I think it was November, December. Yeah, it was November. And I was like, what am I going to do here? I've got to find a race. There's not many 5Ks. This guy was like, look, he was like piped up again. He was like, come and do this race. I was like, okay, I'll come and do it. So went down, got really lucky. The race was so quick. I literally just latched onto some people, went through the first 2K really way too fast, and just held on and managed to run like 15:38, which like I was
Smashed
really
it.
yeah. And I knew I'd got it at 3K because when I went through 3K, one of my friends was there who I've known from running for a long time, and she called out the time at 3K, and I smiled to myself and thought, like, if you can't hang on for 2 more K, it's never going to happen. So you're going to have to get the tattoo. So I had to laugh to myself. Obviously, I was the whole way down to the race as well. I was trying to talk myself out of it. I was hoping the car was going to blow up. I was hoping like the wheels would fall off and I wouldn't get there. I was really like nervous and stuff, but so happy when I'd finished to have got it done. Like just to have said you're going to do something and then actually achieve it, I think is huge. And I whether it was for the bet or whether it was just for myself, saying that for once in 7 years that I'm going to actually do something. Like the last time I said I was going to do something was going to be make the Olympic Games, and that didn't happen. And I left the sport without achieving what I wanted to achieve, to then now saying, right, I'm going to run sub 16. And then within the space of 8 months doing it, I was like, and I was feeling good. Things were going well. There was obviously still negative thoughts and stuff like going around, but I was really like happy to have got it done, especially with a month and a bit to spare. People thought I was like rope-a-doping it. People thought I could have done it really early on. Maybe I could have, but like mentally I wouldn't have been able to. So like physically, maybe I could have done it earlier. Mm-hmm. But mentally I wasn't in a place where I could have gone into a 5K and committed like I did at the end of the year when I knew I didn't have any time left. And I knew the training I'd done a few sessions leading up to it that said that I was in sub 16 to 16 minute pace, which was perfect. I think I only did like 3 or 4 track sessions in the entire year. The rest of it was all just steady running and running home from work and doing a few tempos and stuff, and not really any not any structure. There was like running every day, but I hadn't structured it out to the point that I knew that I needed to do this, and this. I just did things that I knew I used to do. And if I did it and I could do close to it, then I would be able to run the time. And that's how I ended up getting under sub 16, which was quite good. I'm really happy. No, sorry. I said that quite flippantly. I meant like, I was like buzzing about getting it done and then getting the money and stuff because it helped buy a ring for Rebecca.
How much was it you made?
£1,700.
Not bad. Although some would argue that you deserved way more than that, especially for the kind of publicity it brought as well. But I guess that in itself kind of gave you a bit of a high. Okay, guys, so the conversation with Colin, I had to take Bailey to an appointment earlier, so I had to leave. But the conversation was so good that I asked Colin if there was any way we could talk a bit later, and he agreed. So we are going to be having part 2 right now of this conversation, and I hope you enjoy this as much as I do. Really loving this chat here. I want to start, Colin, by talking about... you mentioned this right at the beginning of the interview, but I wanted to dive into it a bit more now in that in an interview you did with Mario Frioli of the Morning Shakeout, who's also a friend of mine. He said you're no longer looking at your Garmin on runs. Now, this is something I preach so much to my audience. They're sick of me talking about it. But can you tell me in your own words why you think it's important not to come obsessed with kind of the number on the watch, particularly when it comes to like easy runs or just regular days?
Mm-hmm. Like when I was younger, I never had because I'm of that generation where Garmin's came in like later. Mm-hmm. I never ran with a Garmin, so I would always run to time. So my times were told like, you got to run for 30 minutes today, 40 minutes, an hour on a Sunday. So I would just run to time. So whether that was 5 miles or 4 miles, it was irrelevant. It was just how it felt. So if it was tired and I was nearly walking, then it was that. And I used to do loops and they would be a 30-minute loop, and I wouldn't have any idea what it was until I got a Garmin and realized it was like 4.5 miles or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. So that's why you can get really caught up and obsessed with, yesterday I was 6-minute mile and today I'm 6:30 mile, and I feel worse today. Obviously you feel worse because you're 6:30 miling, or you might feel better. Like, you just can get so caught up. And I think like with Strava and stuff as well, you can get so caught up in how fast that last run was and how fast this run was and how fast you were 2 weeks ago, when actually, because your body's changing all the time and the distances and stuff and times, you're never going to, like, unless you're an absolute freak, you're not going to be hitting the same minute mile in every single day, every single time you run. And I just prefer running. Mm-hmm. If it's easy and it ends up being a really quick run, then great. And if it's slow and it feels horrible, then that's what it is. So like what I do with Strava is I upload everything that I do on running, but I have a quick look at it, but I don't go into any more detail other than write what the title of the run is, like easy 10 mile or whatever it is, like what it's supposed to be, not a lie, not like, oh, it's like I've tanked it or I'm really trying to push it. I just put exactly how I feel at exactly the time I finished the run, and then just write a little bit in the description. And I'd never really go back. And then when people come in and say, oh, you ran like a K in this, or you ran like a mile at this pace, I'm like, oh, right. And then I'll go back and check it. But I think you can get so caught up in, you add your feelings to the miling, and then you combine that all together, and you can get yourself into really negative spaces in minute miling, and being so like driven by how fast you can like keep doing the same 5 mile loop or the same 10 mile loop. And you can just become way too obsessed with that the segments and like different parts of it and all that. And I just think it's easier just to run to feeling, because some days you will just feel good, and you might run the best run you've ever ran. And then some days you might run that exact same run and feel disgusting and just wish that you weren't out there and you didn't want to do it, but you got through it. But then you might then look at the time and think, oh, I'm terrible today. Like I'm awful. My training's going terrible. And that's what I don't like getting caught up on. I just prefer just running for time and distance and stuff. Like don't get me wrong. I have, like with Strava, I have got caught up sometimes in different types of running. Like last year I went way too hard for like a month and was running all my runs too hard, but not realizing I was just running them and just trying to run 6 miles as fast as I could, basically. And then I sort of realized that was getting silly because I couldn't do sessions or anything as well. So
And was there, or is there, any part of you that feels, oh, these people are watching me, so I got to make sure that I'm doing this right, or people are going to wonder what happened to me if I really struggle one day? Or does that not come into your mind anymore? You're just kind of doing your own thing? Sometimes
it does, but like most of the time I just think I might as well just leave, like just do what I can do. Like it's to a point you sort of, at the beginning you think, oh, I need these runs to be better. I need to constantly be improving. I need people to keep, like, I've got a ridiculous amount of Strava followers out of nowhere. Like I just upload my runs every day, and if then people always give me love, and they're always like commenting and saying nice things, and it's just you can get really caught up with trying to impress them. And I think that's that's one negative side to Strava, is that you constantly try, and especially when you're trying to push forward, you want to impress people all the time. So you want that run to be better, and you might see someone that running, I don't know, really fast over 5 miles, and you think, oh, I'd like to do that. So then you try and do it and emulate it. It doesn't work out, and you can cause yourself an issue. But I don't know, like I've sort of veered away from it. I just upload it exactly how I feel. I try and do everything like that. So like for Instagram, for example, is as soon as I've done what I'm doing, so if it's a run or a session, it's instant reaction. It's straight in the app. It's not recorded again. It's not stopped. It's not thought out. It's just exactly how I feel and what I'm saying for that 1 minute, exactly as I finish what I'm doing. So sometimes I might have gone into the house and I might have thought about it in the run, what I'm going to say, or what I'm feeling, but that completely changes as soon as I turn the camera on, and then whatever just comes out of my mouth comes out. And that's what I try and do with Strava. As soon as I finish, I'll write exactly how the run felt in the title, and then I'll write a little description, and then I just leave it. I don't try and overthink it or try and make out that I'm running better than I'm not. I don't try and say that this run was amazing and I felt great when I didn't. I don't see the point, because you'll get found out anyway. Because if I'm saying I'm feeling great at 6:30 miling every single day, and then it comes to a race and I can only 6 minute mile, people will be like, well, you can't be feeling great doing 6:30 miling every day, are you? Because you're running like a 35 minute 10K and you should be in 30 minute pace. So it all comes out. You've just got, and there's no point in not being honest about it, because you will just get caught out. And that's what I feel about Instagram. I'd rather just talk to people in exactly how you would talk, as if I was just talking to you in the street and you just said to me, oh, I run, and just had a conversation about it. I'd rather do that than put this big show on about how great I'm feeling and how well I'm running and how all these things are amazing. And that's what I try and keep to. And I try and do that within not looking at my Garmin and not doing all that stuff and just running to feeling and trying to tell people to get away from it and not stop talking to me about minute miling and all that stuff, but try and get yourself away from that and move into just being free and like going out and maybe running for 10 miles at 12-minute miling or 15-minute miling and just taking in the scenery, stopping and taking a picture. There's no problem with it. Like, there's no issue with stopping and having like 5 minutes to yourself by the side of a river. I've done it a few times and just had a little relax, or slowed right down to like walking pace and just had a look around and taken it in and then pick it back up. Like, we get really obsessed with trying to do 12 miles consistently at a consistent pace and just blasting it out and then finishing and thinking, well, I didn't stop. I stop for every single traffic light. Every time I get to a road, I think, oh, I could stop here for a minute, take a breather. And I try and time it so I can like stop and have like a little breath and like just relax, which is pretty naughty, I know. But like,
no, it's real, and it's good that you can say that kind of stuff. Yeah. And okay, so related to that, what would the Colin of the past have said to that? You mentioned at the very beginning that you felt like you weren't, the races weren't coming together, that you were struggling to put the results out when it mattered. Now, what you just said right there, maybe you were feeling easy on you said a 6:30 pace on an easy run was easy, but then it didn't come out in the races. What would you say to the Colin of the past, if you could kind of talk to him now? Like, was he actually running easy? Was he kind of caught up in all that stuff?
I'd say, like, just remember what you were like when you're a kid. I think what happens is when you start running at any age, you have like this initial period, I think I did anyway, so this is from my experience, where I ran with no clue about what I was doing. So it would just be, you're going for a 30-minute run, right? So you just go and do that 30-minute run, you finish and you think, oh, I've done a 30-minute run. You've got no relevance about what it is, what happened on it. You just know that it was you were either tired or you weren't tired. And I'd just say, just get back to just running, because the more technical I got and the more professional I got and the more I got into it and the more elite I got, the more you start looking at things that really don't matter. Like, you start looking at minute miling down to respect it, like tiny minute things, heart rates and certain zones at tempos and things that I get do matter if you're into that. But the crux of it is just run. Consistency is key. Enjoy what you're doing. And if you get to the point where you're not enjoying it and you're throwing all these heart rate zones in there and you're knackered, but your heart rate's telling you you're not, but you're completely drained, just relax and enjoy it. And I wish I'd enjoyed more of my running. In the middle part of it, I was too busy trying to stay getting paid by sponsors, stay in races, stay relevant, that I hated something that I loved, going down to the track on a Tuesday and doing a track session. Track sessions are my favorite thing in the world to do. And I hated going down. I hated getting up in the morning and going to the track to do it, because I was so concentrating on the minute details that didn't matter, like certain times to hit 200 meters, certain times to hit a mile and all that stuff. When if I'd have just gone out and ran and enjoyed it and raced people and had a laugh and messed around professionally, it would have been a lot better. And that's what I got away from. And this like last year and stuff has really taken me back to when I was like 15, 16, 17, when I first started running. And I got a coach and he was like, you're going to go and run every day except for a Friday. And I was like, you're joking. But I did it and it made me better. And I didn't think about it. I wasn't thinking, oh, I'm tired today, I've got this. I just knew I had a session on a Tuesday, Thursday and on a Saturday, and I ran in between it. And that's the easiest way I could say that I would go back and say to myself, just forget all of the technical mumbo jumbo and just run and enjoy it. And if you run hard on a tempo and you accidentally go into your upper thresholds, who cares? Like, as long as you enjoyed it and you finish, and sometimes it might be harder than others, as long as you recover properly, then it's not a big deal. Great.
Thank you so much. That's really interesting to hear what you would have given yourself as advice. And looking back now, now that you've had, over a year, I think it's over a year. I actually meant to ask you that. When did this journey start, the 16-minute?
I'm at 430 days plus now, I think 32 days. So it was like a year and a bit away. Okay.
Is it still about weight loss or has it become about so much more now?
It's more now. Like I had the stuff I was doing last year off of nothing. I was like, really thought I could get like, I don't know how to explain this. I've got something in the back of my head that says there's something still in you, that you can do something. So it says like, and I don't know whether I'm still trying to figure that out, whether that's me just clinging to the past and saying, look, I still want to achieve what I should have achieved when I ran, or it is actually like a thing that I can do. Does that make sense? So it's not like it's not that I want to give up and just run and that's it. Like I've still got a competitive edge in my head. I still think competitively. I still have the urges to run better, and run faster and run stronger and get better and better. And I just need to hope that manifests into something while I keep pushing through, and not just be that I'm clinging on to the past, hoping that I'm still good. And that's what I'm trying to figure out this year. And it's been a struggle. Like since I broke 16, I lost like a lot of direction on what I was doing. It probably came out in my videos a bit. I've tried to be as honest as I can with everybody. Like I was supposed to run a 10K last Friday. And I completely bottled it. Like I hadn't run on the track for 6 years, hadn't raced on the track. And I spent the entire day on Friday leading up to the race just getting mental, just literally losing the plot, talking myself out of it, like body shaming myself and just being really like self-destructive and demotivating. And I don't know where it came from. But it was shocking, like, to be honest. Like I completely self-destroyed myself the whole day and just ruined any chance I could have even getting onto the race to the start line. I should have just gone and done it anyway. But even when I got home to get changed, I couldn't get myself ready. I just panicked. It's like never really happened to me before, but probably has happened to me before, but I haven't remembered it. And it's probably happened in a slightly different way. Like when I was professional, and probably what led to me retiring was probably a little manifest of what happened on Friday. And yeah, it was just a real struggle. And it's just like, if I'd have said that to myself last year, it would have been like, just get on and do it. Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you run 37 minutes, but now I've sort of built myself up to an expectation of trying to run fast over 10K. Let's say like in my head, I want to run 30 minutes and keep up with the people and don't want to get beat, especially when I'm on the track on something that I think I'm good at. If I'm going to go on the track compared to a road race and then I'm going to get my bum handed to me by people and get lapped, then that's then adding a layer of, do you still have it?
Yeah.
You got to convince yourself, can you keep going? Are you doing the right training? Are you doing all these things right? What haven't you been doing? Oh, you've had a beer every Friday, and then that all built up on Friday of like, you're not fit enough, you're not strong enough, you haven't done enough work, you need to get your head down, which I do. And I have taken my foot off the gas a little bit since January. Like I've trained and I've ran. I haven't done anything specific. I haven't done any sessions. I only started sessions last week. And when I think about it, like if I was to turn around and say to my son in like 5 years, when he's old enough to understand that like I got an opportunity to run again and I did exactly the same thing I did when I was a professional, I'd be really annoyed with myself. So since Saturday, I've changed everything and like changed my perspective, changed my training and really trying to like nail down how to run. And then my whole purpose now is to show my son that anything is possible and you don't have to keep worrying about what you did in the past. So now to get back running at any level, whether that is to an elite level or whatever it ends up being from this point, and it could be anything, it's just to turn around to him and say like, you don't have to ever give up and you don't have to just think like, just end it here. And people have told you that you're too old and people have told you that you can't do this thing and you can't do what you want to do. And people are too scared. Like even now I'm skirting around saying that I want to do this because you're scared to say something out loud because then you commit to it. And then if you don't do it, people shoot you down. But I do want to get back to a really high level. And I don't see how I can't not do that. Like I can only see how I can do it. And the only ways I won't do it is by not trying. And that's what I was doing from January, was giving myself an excuse since I ran sub 16 not to be at the level that I was. So if someone said to me, oh, you broke sub 16, so what's next? And it's like, oh, well, I'll run 2:30 if I can for the marathon. If I don't do that, then it's fine. And it's not fine. That's not how I've set myself up. That's not how I think. That's not what I want. And I will turn around in another 5 years' time and be disappointed with myself because I didn't take the opportunity that I had now to keep pushing forward and keep training. And if I want to stay in the job that I'm doing, which I don't, I'm working in the thing and doing this, then continue on doing what you're doing. Like stay just working 9 to 5, running when you can, pretending that you're like, not pretending, but what's the word I'm trying to say? Like not fully committing. So you're half committing. So sub 16 was not easy, but I did it. And then I've half committed into the next stage, which is push forward. What can you do? Could you become a 2:20 marathon runner? Could you run 30 minutes for 10K? Could you do these things? Ask yourself the questions instead of saying, well, I might do it if I just keep running every day and I don't have any thought. Yeah, I don't have any thought about it. I can turn around and say, well, I didn't achieve it because I was 32 and I achieved something, and it's sort of niggling at me. I think it's probably sense the frustration in me. So I'm trying not to revert back to being an immature young man who just thinks it'll happen. It will happen, because it's always happened for me in my life. I've always got out of sticky situations by just running and not putting any effort in and getting good and doing things. But now I actually have to put the effort in and work hard and actually plan it out and think about what I'm trying to do. So yeah, sorry, I knew I'd go on a bit tonight.
No. Actually, Colin, I think that was so good for people to hear, because we all do that to an extent. I know most of the people listening do that, maybe at a different level, maybe at a different situation, but we all do that. I am already feeling that kind of, thinking about returning to running. And I totally know what you're saying about, everyone feels this on some level. You and I are a bit more in the spotlight than others, but, everyone's going to feel that same way of, if you come back after something, it's, if you don't quite get to where you were or don't quite get to be good enough, people will be like, oh, well, you did have your heyday, kind of like you did it. But kind of in that patronizing way, even though the people that we really, their opinions matter to us, they would never be thinking that way. It's just the people who don't matter. But you assume that everyone is thinking that way. So totally get what you're saying there. And thank you for being honest with us. I definitely think my audience will be able to resonate with your words there. Okay, so one more question I wanted to ask you about the journey, and then we'll just kind of wrap up here. You've already talked about what you're doing next, but diet wise, you mentioned that, when you kind of went off the rails and stopped running, you ate whatever you want when you wanted. How has the diet changed to go along with the running?
I've got a lot of work to do. I've got some really bad habits in diet. So I enjoy a beer. I'm not going to lie.
Nothing wrong with that.
I do have a lot of work to do around that. Like last year I did, to lose the weight initially, I stuck to a strict regime, which was pretty dangerous for a bit, just to make sure that I basically went into a keto diet, get into the keto stage to try and burn the fat as quickly as possible. Then as soon as I got into that stage, I got out of it and then just let the running take over, and then started eating normally. And then from then I've just eaten normal. It was only for I think I did it for like a month and a half or something.
Would you have done that again if you could go back? Like, do you think that was the right way to start off, or how would you have done it different?
Not really. I just did it because I was rushing, because I was too heavy for my style of running. And I was just trying to figure out the quickest way to lose a lot of weight quickly. That is a quick way of doing it. And I don't recommend it to anybody. I don't think it's a sensible thing to do. It wasn't the right thing to do at the time. I just did it because I thought at the time it was the right thing to do. Now I would say just run, be sensible, eat well, and make sure that you're not, obviously it's easy things, isn't it? Don't overeat. Don't have a McDonald's every single night and try and run 10 miles. It's not going to work. Like, try and think about the process of what you're eating. And like now, I'm much better, but I'm not at the level that I want to be at with my diet, if that makes sense. Like, there's a lot of work that needs to go into it. Like, I'm really good on my water intake. I'm really good on my vitamins and stuff. It's just now and again, you just get sloppy, and especially when you're working still, you just think, I'll run over the road and grab a prep, when you should just be bringing something in from home, and you shouldn't be constantly trying to look for some takeaway or a Greg's or something, which is like a pasty place. Like, sometimes you just run in and grab it, and sometimes you convince yourself that you need a bacon sandwich out, like you definitely need it three mornings out of 5. Like, you can convince yourself that you definitely need it. But like, I need to just get into a steady state of healthy, and like, I go through patches of it, but there's times where we still have a very yellow diet, if that makes sense. Like, a lot of chips and stuff like that we just don't need to have. We just do it out of convenience with the baby being young and stuff. Sometimes we feed him, make sure he's done, and then we'll just rush something in later on, which is not the right thing to do. We should really be eating a little bit more sensibly. And I think that's good for people to hear, though. And Colin, I am not one for eating a perfect diet. Actually, even yesterday I took a picture of my lunch, which was a large
frozen custard they have over here. It's like an ice cream, but like really thick. And that was a Reese's peanut butter one was my lunch. So I'm all for, having balance. People know that. I actually had Rennie McGregor on and Nancy Clark on the podcast a few months ago talking about how there are no bad foods. You shouldn't, ever get to a point where you're not having those foods. So actually that's probably refreshing for people to hear that, you still struggle yourself. And, that's everyone does, whether they admit it or not. So no worries there whatsoever. Okay, just to wrap up here before we get on to the final four, what about if you were to say one thing or give one piece of advice for runners who may have lost their way? The idea of getting started again is really intimidating. They can't quite bring themselves to do it. They think others are going to judge them. People might kind of make negative comments while they're out running. What would you say to them to kind of give them the motivation to believe they can do it?
I'd say it's hard to hear. No one cares.
Mm-hmm.
It's true. Just know, I think 100% all the time that someone actually cares what I'm doing, and they actually don't. I'm out running and I get really self-conscious about what someone might think in a car, or what someone I run past might think when I'm in tights, and I think, oh God, and before I even leave the house, I have about 1 million conversations with myself about how other people will perceive me running in the street, which is ridiculous. Because once you're out there and you're running, you see them for half a nanosecond, they fly by. And if they are thinking anything, you're never going to know anyway, because you're not going to talk to them and you're not going to see them. And it's just, you just need to forget, just do yourself, enjoy, whether that's wearing bright pink leggings and a bright orange top, just get out and enjoy yourself, and just don't worry about what other people think, because they actually don't care. You care more than what they care. And that's what stops you getting out and doing it. And especially in the gym, I hate the gym. I hate going in the gym because I think that everyone cares that I can't lift a heavy weight and stuff. No one cares. No one actually cares about what you're doing in the gym. They're just getting on with themselves. They might look over and your perception is that they're thinking, oh my God, you're massive, what you're doing on that treadmill. But just think they started at some point. So even if they are thinking that, they're idiots, because they were out of shape in that at one point. So they had to get to that point for them to be there. So I wouldn't worry. I would just say, just no one cares about what they think of you. You just need to just get out and do you.
So
That's what I would say.
So true. And then, I also would add to that, I've said this before, when it comes to people driving by in cars or seeing you outside, if they do even notice you, they're probably either one, checking you out, or two, thinking they are a runner themselves and thinking, oh, I feel a bit guilty for not running, or maybe I should go for a run, or that looks like fun. Or if they...
I do it all the time. That's what I'm doing. When I'm looking at the car, I'm like, oh, I wish I was doing that.
Exactly. But if they're not a runner, then they probably didn't even notice you were running. So, just keep that in mind. Okay, thank you so much. We are just going to take a second to thank our sponsors, and we'll be back with the Running for Real 4. Summer is finally approaching after an endless winter, and for many of us, that means we have to get our runs in before that burning sun starts to beat down on our head, which means early starts, and early starts can mean we don't always get a chance to have a proper breakfast before our runs, although I would recommend you have something. Starting the day on a deficit means you have to catch up on fueling if you want to perform at your best, and that's where Body Health Perfect Amino can come in. If you take it immediately following those summer morning runs, or any time you finish your run, and give your body the kickstart it needs to start repairing those muscles after you run, that gives you 23 minutes while it digests or while it begins to be utilized by your body to stretch, foam roll, shower while it works its magic, and then you can have your breakfast or have your meal and get on with your day, knowing that you've given your body those essential 8 amino acids that your body needs to support and maintain all your systems. Body Health is a vegan-sourced, non-GMO, gluten-free, soy and dairy-free product. And guess what? They have a 100% money-back guarantee, so you have absolutely nothing to lose by giving it a try. By now, you know I believe in it, and you should too. You can get 10% off using code TINA10 at bodyhealth.com. All right, Colin, just 4 more questions for you, starting with a unique nutrition tip or something that you like to eat, maybe what you did like to eat if you want to share, before a race, or something that you would like to share with the listeners.
I've just got into drinking kombucha. which is like for
they
gut
get
health.
it in the UK now?
Yeah, and
I've been waiting for years for that to come out.
There's a place in Glasgow that does it, and it's called I forgot what it's called, but it's absolutely amazing. And I've been doing loads of research on it, and just looking at gut health and how that helps with nutritional and just getting vitamins and everything into your body quickly. And it just seems like such a great. I can't believe that people haven't been taking it for longer. Actually, and why it hasn't been there for longer.
It's funny you mentioned that. I've the last few years I've been going home. Whenever I go home and I'm saying to people, my family and friends, I'm like, I wish I had kombucha, and they're like, what did you just say? And I'm like, kombucha, and but no one had even heard of it. I even typed it in on Google once where I live in England, and I couldn't find it. Literally within 100 miles, there wasn't anywhere kombucha. Crazy. So I'm excited to hear that. And for those who haven't tried it and can get access to it, if you're in the US, you definitely have access. Go try it. It is a little bit strange. Yes, there are some floaty things in it, but you get used to it, and it is such a good drink and so good for you. So enjoy.
Yeah, definitely.
What about a running for real moment, a moment that only runners will understand?
That moment when you're just floating, when you don't feel like you're putting any effort in, but you are, but it's just easy, and you just take it, and things that you can just take everything in. You only get them moments now and again, and they're really few and far between, but it's just like a clarity moment, and you're just running, and everything not seems to slow down, because I don't think that, but it just, it's just you're everything's easy. Your legs are hitting the floor. It doesn't feel hard. You're just relaxed, and your mind's thinking clearly. I lose that instantly and forget what I was thinking about. But it is, I think that's...
When was the last time you had that?
A few weeks ago.
Okay. Well, that's good.
Maybe longer, but it was probably a few weeks ago, and I felt good.
Good. Cool. Well, thank you for sharing. What about a high moment for you?
Mine was probably the first time I ran in Oslo. Was pretty immense. It's somewhere that you've only ever seen on black and white films, and it's crammy running there and doing crazy things. And then all of a sudden I was on this track, and it was nothing like what I thought it looked like at all. And it was just standing on the start line, and was just this is a bit surreal.
Yeah, I bet that was an amazing moment. Pretty cool. Thank you for sharing. And finally, what do you tell yourself when you're standing on the start line of a race or a park run?
What do I say?
Or what did you say, and what do you say now?
What I used to say, which was stupid, is this is what you want to do. And now I say, Rebecca says it, and it's quite basic, but it's just go and run. It doesn't matter what happens, just run. Whatever happens, just run. But I wish I'd said that to myself every single time I stood on the start line, instead of saying this stupid thing of this is what you do it for and all that cheese. That isn't what you do it for. You do it for just to run and to be happy and just to enjoy it. And I wish I'd said that to myself a million times more.
So true. Thank you so much. All right. Finally, I ask my guests to send me a photo of them in a power pose. Now, you shouldn't have any problem with this, being that you don't mind being a bit silly. Will you send a photo of us, of you standing in a power pose, or something you would do to kind of build your confidence before you go into a race or something like that?
Yeah, cool.
Okay. All right, Colin, where can people find more about you? We've mentioned Strava, we've mentioned Instagram. I will put links in the show notes, but where else can people find you, and maybe tell people what your handles are?
Yeah, my Strava, my Instagram, my Twitter are basically just what I use all the time. I have a YouTube channel, but I hardly ever use it, but I am going to try and use it a lot more. I tried little things on it, but they just didn't work. So I stopped doing it. It's just one of them things that you want to keep going, but
it's a lot of hard work.
Yeah, you just get sidetracked, and I'm being lazy. So I will bring that back up, but it's mainly just my Strava, my Instagram, and my Twitter, and it's all just my name. And that's my handle for all of it. So yeah, just go along, and if you like it, check it out. If not, don't worry. I'm sure they will. Well, Colin, thank you so much. This was such a good chat, and I really enjoyed it, and I'm sure the listeners did too. Thank you so much for your time and for just being honest and real with us. No problem. Thank you.
How good of a chat was that? And so much of what Colin said, I resonated with. I hope you resonate with it. He really had some wise words, really was able to say the things that we think about so often, but we're often afraid to say. And I hope you will kind of take us up on the challenge of kind of being your authentic self, kind of stating your running and your training for what it is, not feeling the pressure to kind of look up other people or what they're thinking. So I really enjoyed that chat with Colin. You definitely should go find him on Strava, on Instagram, on Twitter. You will not regret it. He is a great guy. And, I'm really thinking about ways I can work with him in the future, because he definitely has a similar mindset to me. You can find links to everything we talked about today in the show notes at tinamuir.com/episode 59. And I hope you will consider checking out the Running for Real podcast series if you haven't already. Today, I told you about the beginners program, but remember there's also a coming back from injury, marathon, nutrition, pregnancy and postpartum, and mental training series. And each of them are really, really good, packed with so much good information. So I hope you will check them out for me. Every one that you buy just helps me just that little bit for, being able to sustain myself as a podcaster. So thank you so much. So next week we have a bit of an interesting one. Susan Latke, who I have on the show. This recording is a little bit different to every other recording I've ever done, and I've never heard an interview like this done before anywhere else on any other podcast, but it is a great chat. She is talking about a lot of things, especially about what we learn from the people we surround ourselves with, as opposed to just the running itself. And just being yourself. Really, really good interview. You're going to love this one next week. I hope you have a great week, and I'll speak to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Running for Real podcast. Be sure to check out tinamuir.com for show notes and even more helpful running information.